Imagine opening a dusty box from 1907. You break the seal and you're expecting to find, crumbling yellowed letters or maybe some old tax records.
Right, something boring.
Exactly. But inside, you don't find old paper. You find a Wendy's drive-through receipt clearly dated June 10th, 2142. Today, we are looking at a declassified dossier that claims reality as we know it has been completely hacked.
It is, without a doubt, the most reality-bending document to ever enter the public domain.
We are diving deep into a recent explosive article by Michael Tremblay. Tremblay has spent months unpacking this jaw-dropping 4,000-page declassified National Archives dossier. It's informally dubbed Operation Tremendous Timeline. And the core claim of this dossier is physical documented evidence that President Donald Trump possesses and actively uses a time machine located beneath Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, and before we dive into the madness here, we know this is an incredibly politically charged topic, right? It spans across both sides of the aisle.
Absolutely.
So our goal today isn't to take sides or endorse any particular political viewpoint, left-wing or right-wing. We are strictly acting as your tour guides through this bizarre, declassified text. We are impartially reporting on the paradigm-shifting ideas contained within Tremblay's article to, help you make sense of claims that are fundamentally breaking the minds of historians and physicists alike.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're going to explore the physical artifacts, the completely bizarre mechanics of the time machine itself, the historical sightings across the millennia, and the chaotic political fallout happening right now in Washington. Because the wildest part to me is how this all came to light. This wasn't uncovered by some rogue spy infiltrating an underground bunker. It was found by a bureaucrat doing paperwork.
Right, Sarah Harrington. She is a senior archivist with, I think, 14 years of experience at the National Archives. Her job is about as mundane as it gets. She was just conducting a routine declassification audit on a box of century-old real estate permits.
It's just totally normal property deeds.
Yeah, but as she's going through them, she finds a subfolder. Tremblay notes her testimony to the Senate Intelligence Committee where she describes it. The folder is wrapped haphazardly in gold foil and sealed shut with this thick, heavy crust of industrial hairspray.
Hairspray. If we're talking about physical evidence of chronological disruption, something that implies a multi-billion-dollar top-secret operation, why are they preserving evidence like an 80s prom hairdo? You'd expect, vacuum-sealed bags or argon gas chambers. It's like finding a smartphone buried in a Victorian time capsule, but they just, taped it up. Doesn't that seem incredibly haphazard?
You would think so, yeah, if this were a controlled DARPA experiment. But Tremblay's analysis points out that the haphazard nature of the preservation is the first major clue. It wasn't a lab technician sealing these files. It was someone operating entirely on their own, improvising with what they had in their bathroom. And ironically, that improvised hairspray seal is what allowed forensic chronologist Dr. Eris Thorne to authenticate the contents.
Because the contents are they're completely impossible. Sarah Harrington opens this hairspray-crusted foil and out falls that 2142 Wendy's receipt from Trumpville, New York, ordering 3 Bigley Baconators and a goodly Diet Coke. And then there's the KFC bucket with a label from 1907.
A bucket of chicken that was still radiating heat.
Which makes no sense.
None. A warm bucket of chicken simply should not exist in an archive box sealed for over a century.
And it wasn't just fast food in that folder either. Tremblay lists a first edition Gutenberg Bible.
Which is priceless.
Beyond priceless. But the margins are entirely filled in Sharpie ink. The notes suggest that the property described in the book of Genesis would make a beautiful resort.
So once Dr. Thorne definitively proved these artifacts were physically real and not forgeries, the intelligence community had a terrifying realization. These items didn't just manifest out of thin air. Someone actually built a machine capable of puncturing the space-time continuum.
Right, which forces us to ask, how exactly is the president traversing space-time? And that sparked a frantic hunt through classified servers for the blueprints, which Tremblay actually details in his article.
He does. They found the designs for a device officially titled the Very Big, Very Beautiful Chronosphere. This thing was co-designed by theoretical physicists and luxury interior decorators. MIT's top quantum physicist, Dr. Harrison Cooper, reviewed these schematics. He expected to find massive, hypercooled, superconducting magnets spinning rings of exotic matter. What he actually found was a heavily modified gold-plated golf cart.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's like a Back to the Future DeLorean, but make it country club chic. Tremblay writes that the primary power source is an onboard cold fusion reactor shoved into the chassis where you would normally strap in your golf clubs. but I have to push back here. Can a standard golf cart chassis actually withstand the physical forces of a cold fusion reactor tearing a hole in the fabric of time? I feel like the plastic cup holders would instantly vaporize.
It's a completely logical question, and Dr. Cooper spent 50 pages of the dossier answering it. The golf cart itself isn't enduring the friction of time travel. The schematics show that the cold fusion reactor powers what the dossier humbly refers to as the best time circuits. Nobody has ever seen time circuits like these. Those circuits project a localized gravitational bubble around the vehicle. Think of it like being inside the eye of a hurricane.
So inside the cart, everything is perfectly calm.
Exactly. The circuits create a pocket of standard Earth gravity and temporal stability around the driver. Meanwhile, the space immediately outside that bubble is violently twisting and tearing at the fabric of the universe. If you stuck your hand outside the cart while in transit, your arm would either age 1,000 years in a millisecond or revert to primordial soup.
Okay, so the bubble keeps the driver from turning to dust. But why a gold-plated golf cart? The dossier describes the operation mechanism as a proprietary technology called quantum tremendousness. You sit down, punch a year into the dashboard, and press a massive button labeled "Make the Timeline Great Again" to jump. Why go through all that trouble for the aesthetic?
That is precisely what Dr. Cooper found so profoundly shaking. This isn't just a machine, it's a collision of hyper-advanced temporal mechanics and pure personal branding. The physics outlined in the dossier suggest that the machine actually requires that level of grandiosity to function.
Wait, really? The physics require it?
Yes. The user interface is tailored entirely to the psychology of its operator. The gold plating, the specific phrasing on the button, it demands absolute, unwavering confidence from the pilot to stabilize the quantum field. If you put a hesitant, cautious scientist behind the wheel, the bubble would likely collapse.
So it's powered by cold fusion and sheer ego. Wow. Now that we know he has a functional country club chic time machine, the obvious next question is where and when has he been taking it? Because if you have the keys to human history, you don't just go to Wendy's.
No, you go everywhere, and that is what is currently forcing academia into an absolute meltdown. Historians are having to entirely reevaluate the human record because the president is essentially photobombing antiquity.
It's crazy. Tremblay details the work of Oxford University's Dr. Ellie Rostova. She ran advanced facial recognition software on millions of archival images and historical documents, and she found 14 highly probable anomalies. My favorite one is from the 1893 Chicago World's Fair.
And in the photo, he is aggressively arguing with Nikola Tesla, holding a document covered in thick Sharpie that reads, "Electric current is a loser technology."
And it doesn't stop there. Dr. Rostova looked at a newly restored 15th century fresco in Florence. It clearly shows him standing in a Renaissance plaza trying to sell branded steaks to Lorenzo de' Medici.
And the incursions go back even further. The dossier includes ground-penetrating radar scans from the Great Pyramid of Khufu dating back to 2560 BC.
Right. Deep under the sand, they found a fossilized plastic yard sign. It says, "Future site of Trump Oasis Giza." Tremblay also notes that archaeologists translated newly uncovered hieroglyphs from the site. The text describes a golden-haired merchant from the sky who spent hours complaining to the pharaoh's architects that the pyramid's capstone was too pointy and lacked branding.
And then there is the fragmented scroll from ancient Rome. It describes a tan soothsayer interrupting a prominent senator in the forum. The soothsayer reportedly stated that he prefers emperors who don't get stabbed.
Right.
And aggressively suggested they build a massive wall around the Senate.
It's an extreme high-stakes game of Where's Waldo, but played across millennia. But I have to push back here on the physics. If he's literally changing history by arguing with Tesla or badgering the pharaohs, wouldn't the butterfly effect mean we'd already be living in a completely altered present? Why are these just funny anomalies rather than reality-altering events?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is the exact question keeping quantum physicists awake at night. The old sci-fi model of time travel, the fragile timeline where stepping on a bug in the Cretaceous period ruins humanity, appears to be wrong. The dossier proposes a new theory. The timeline is incredibly elastic.
Elastic, like a rubber band.
More like a massive self-correcting river. You throw a boulder in, there's a splash and a temporary disruption, but the water ultimately flows around it and continues in the same general direction. The universe absorbs these incursions. Look at the specific nature of these anomalies: the pharaoh's capstone, the Roman wall, the stakes in Florence. It is a highly consistent psychological profile being projected backward through time.
He isn't traveling back to assassinate historical figures.
No, he isn't altering a massive global wars. He is essentially treating all of human history as a series of branding opportunities and real estate ventures.
So the timeline doesn't break because he isn't trying to change the fundamental arc of civilization. He just wants his name on it. The timeline easily absorbs a fossilized yard sign at Giza because it just gets buried in the sand, and the pharaoh still builds the pyramid.
Precisely. The universe can handle a minor branding dispute. But while the physical timeline might be elastic, the revelation of this dossier has completely paralyzed modern-day Washington. How does the government function when the commander-in-chief can literally rewrite yesterday?
Tremblay paints a picture of sheer chaos on Capitol Hill. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer was absolutely furious. He complained that the president is spending weekends in 1803 trying to buy Louisiana from France just to name it Trumplandia, rather than fixing today's issues.
Schumer's frustration is rooted in immediate governance, right? But then Speaker Mike Johnson immediately stepped up to defend the president. Johnson argued the Constitution doesn't forbid a sitting president from consulting the Founding Fathers directly. He claimed Americans want traditional values, whether they're sourced from 2225, 1750, or 2000 BC.
So what does this all mean? It's like a constitutional crisis wrapped inside a sci-fi blockbuster. But practically speaking, I have to push back again. How can the Supreme Court rule on an action like a pardon or an election violation that literally hasn't happened yet or happened 200 years ago? Tremblay brings up legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin asking about this jurisprudence paradox.
This raises an important question about the limits of presidential immunity and the sheer unpreparedness of our legal system. The entire foundation of our legal system relies on a fixed, linear progression of time. If you break the law today, you go to court tomorrow based on laws passed yesterday. But if the president travels back to 1840 and issues a blanket pardon, does that out-of-time pardon apply in 2026? How can the Supreme Court evaluate a precedent that was retroactively inserted into the record yesterday morning? If the executive branch can physically drive a golf cart into the past and alter the text of the precedent before the court even convenes, the judiciary's role collapses.
It's a total legal nightmare. Tremblay brings up a crazier hypothetical. If the president travels back and prevents the birth of a rising political rival, is that election interference or just a preemptive campaign strategy?
The legal framework just has no parameters for temporal displacement, and notice how both sides are reacting impartially in Tremblay's account. Neither side is debating the physics anymore. They are both using the time machine to justify existing political narratives. To Schumer, it's neglecting the present. To Johnson, it's preserving tradition.
And while Congress argues, the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, was totally silent for 48 hours. When she finally spoke, she framed the leak as a partisan media witch hunt. She called it innovative travel arrangements and noted the president is light years ahead of his opponents. She even flat out refused to comment on his private discussions with George Washington regarding Revolutionary War trade deals.
Which is just, it's actively destabilizing reality. And not just in Washington. Tremblay tracks how this immediately fractured the global economy.
Right. Wall Street absolutely panicked. There was a massive flash crash driven by fears that the president might travel back to 2009 and aggressively short Bitcoin before it gained value.
But then the markets violently rallied based on rumors that he had successfully traveled to the year 2300 and secured exclusive mining rights on Mars. Markets run on predicting the future, but they break when the future can be strip mined before it happens.
And right now there are massive midnight crowds gathering outside Mar-a-Lago, just hoping to see a flash of gold light and smell ozone. It has become this mythological spectacle.
Which leaves us with a profound existential question to consider. If the timeline is elastic, it can be reshaped. If major historical events are constantly subject to retroactive editing by temporal tourists, how can you be sure of your own personal memories? We rely on a shared consensus of the past to build our reality.
That is a terrifying thought.
If the past is entirely malleable, perhaps true political power no longer lies in predicting the future. The ultimate power is holding the copyright to the past.
Holding the copyright to the past. That is a heavy reality-bending thought to carry with you today. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Tremblay's article and Operation Tremendous Timeline. Stay curious, keep questioning the narrative, and remember the next time you read a history book, that ink might just still be wet. We'll see you next time.